Guys, welcome. Hope you've had a really good weekend. We're going to jump on in a sec, make sure I'm plugged in, with one of our favourite humans, Ellie Lemons, and we are going to be talking all things what women want. So I will wait for her to jump on. She should be here real soon. She'll request a go. Should happen real soon. She'll be here. She is.
Hello.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Did Rocky bring you breakfast in bed?
No.
One more year. When she...
I did get made breakfast.
Did you?
Yeah, some porridge.
Did she? Perfect. Did she bring it to you?
No. I got up at sunrise. She woke me up at sunrise. We went and watched the sunrise. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
That is perfect. So for those that are jumping on, what we're essentially looking to do, the Momentum Gents, is start a couple of series. We're going to talk about one next weekend, which is more directed with the males. But with the females, it's around what women want. And for a number of reasons, we're doing this. But for so many reasons. But one of the, I mean, you and I love talking about this anyway, so it's just kind of one of our standard conversations. But one of the things that's really big for Momentum, obviously with men, there's so many elements of their lives that we're trying to navigate, get right and get better. One of them being relationships. And I think we're kidding ourselves if we think we have all the answers. In fact, we've got very few. So we want to make sure that we create the conversation, which will essentially bridge the gap between what men are doing potentially and what women want, and hopefully as a result have better relationships, sex lives, and everything in between. How does that sound to you?
Pretty good. That'd be great if you guys could get on top of it.
Perfect. So I don't even know where to start. We'll just kind of dip in and then we'll just see where it evolves to. But one of the, so we've, as you're aware, we've spent the last couple of months doing a shit ton of research around what guys are struggling with, what all the things that they're finding really challenging. But also from a female point of view, we spoke to a whole bunch of females that we're really close with that have either got boyfriends, husbands, brothers, whatever it may be, and start to get insight from what it looks like from their side of things, what they see guys struggle with, where they think, we can bridge the gap, things like that. There's a number of recurring themes that I'd love to go into. But the first one, and I'm going to just hit you like hard straight away, is the reoccurring theme that came up around communication and blokes not being very good communicators, which probably won't surprise too many, because we know this is a recurring theme. But what I am interested in is, Kylie, welcome, is what does it look like? What is good communication? And feel free, there's a lot of females on here. This is beautiful insights. What does good communication look like? Because communication is a very broad term, but what, in your eyes, or even speak on behalf of fellow girlfriends, what does good communication look like?
That's a really big one. I think
sorry to throw you in deep like that.
Communication is everything, right? So like anytime anyone reaches out for a conversation, anyone asks a question, they're seeking connection. And I think that's essentially communication and connection are linked very closely. I think from my experience, it's having that want for connection and the want for communication to be met.
Yep.
With openness instead of just, because I've had times where I've said something and I've been seeking connection or seeking a conversation about it, and it's like, oh, okay,
shut
and that's
down.
it, and then it's shut down, and then it's like, well, that makes me nervous about doing that again or saying bringing something up again. So it just begins this cycle. And I think if that's in a relationship, that's really hard. If you've got a cycle where you feel like you're constantly the one bringing something up, and they're not receiving it, or they're not holding space for that, then it ends up being this, like, you're bashing your head against the wall, and then eventually it just gets embarrassing. You kind of
Yep.
feel like, well, why am I going to keep bringing something up if I'm not being met? Does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. I want to go into holding space in a sec because we need to talk about that. Great concept. One of the things, this is really interesting. I literally had this conversation yesterday with a client, because I can only imagine from your side, and vice versa, it actually happens from, I've been in similar positions, is it can be a cascade of small events that lead to you completely shutting down. So for example, if you express your desires, if you express your needs, wants, whatever it is, and it's not received, then I can only assume, and it'd be interesting to see what you've got to say about it, that it just, you contract just a little bit.
You
and
get a sense of shame for feeling how you're feeling.
Yes.
And shame is like a shutdown almost.
Yeah.
It's like you can't, it's an embarrassment, I guess, like a form of embarrassment almost. Would you say that? Like,
totally.
So if you keep bringing up something, say, for example, it's something sexually that you want that you haven't discussed with your partner, and they shut you down, well, then you're going to be like, oh, shit, they think something's wrong with me. I'm weird. I'm not okay. And it bounces back on you. I think that's probably a big miscommunication with relationships, is often they are our biggest triggers, and they are where we are most vulnerable. And so in being shut down, it's often a lot more than being shut down by a friend or shut down by a family member who, you know, they've got their own stuff going on. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It makes heaps of sense. What I think, and this is a conversation I had yesterday, for both parties, whatever that looks like, is it's really important in that moment to express how you feel, because you can change the direction from there. So for example, let's say that you were talking sexually and you're talking about a sexual desire, and they kind of were like, whoa. And then for whatever reason, you felt the need to contract or pull back as a result of that. That is the exact moment where it's really important to communicate, look, I noticed your response. For me to stay kind of open and expansive, that's not the healthiest response, because I feel a level of shame, guilt, or judgment when you respond the way you do. And if that happens over a consecutive period of time, then I shut down and I become a lot less of myself. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Like the most perfect answer, but when people are triggered, like, I feel like that's going to be hard to say. I think for me, and I don't want to say for women, because sometimes I feel like a man can be the better communicator within a relationship than the women. Like, I've experienced that before. But it's like setting, almost, I think the way you set up what you're bringing up is important.
Yep.
So it's like, hey, this has really been on my mind. It's got nothing to do with you. It's not anything I need, but it's something that just keeps coming up and it's really bugging me a little bit. Can we just have a discussion about it? So immediately you're not attacking them. You're saying it's on you. This is how I feel. This is where
this is big.
It's me. And so can we have a discussion? And then when you say discussion, it's not like, you're not doing this, like, rah, rah, rah. It's not an attack on that person, which immediately flares normally their ego, in which they jump up and they go, how dare you, like, come at me with this, like, this is not me, like, rah, 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 and they get really defensive, and then it just ends up in a shitty place.
A shitstorm.
Correct.
So you made us
setting up communication is important.
Yeah.
Like,
brilliant.
And even now, like, with, you know, for those who don't know, I'm a co-parent, and so if I have to bring something up, I set the scene like a champion. I am like, hey, this has really been bothering me. It might be nothing to you, but it's really been something, like, it's just not feeling right to me. Can we just have a quick chat, or can I just ask you a question about this? And then you go from there. So it's like putting it back on you, because if someone feels like they're being attacked, like, you do this all the time, you don't make me feel comfortable, you don't make me feel safe, they're immediately going to go into defense mode because they feel like they're being attacked.
That is a really good answer.
Thanks.
So to recap what was just said there, the language that you use is super important. So instead of you, it's I feel this way when this happens, as opposed to you make me feel A, B, and C when you do E and F.
well, yeah, like even now, like if you turn to me on this and we're like, you're making me feel really uncomfortable, rah, rah, I'm going to be like, well, what the fuck? Like, what? But if you
You
said,
do
oh, I'm
make me feel
and it's like,
uncomfortable.
and it's niggling me, I'm going to be like, oh, what? Like, let me in. And I'm going to lean towards you instead of lean away from you.
Yeah.
So when it's about you and it's about the other person, then the other person is more likely to lean towards them, I guess, than retreat to their safe place, because which can be whatever, I don't know, but it's a way.
Yep. I love it. It's good. The dating game, fascinating space to play in. What, 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 based on your experience, because you're just speaking the best you can from your experience, what are some of the do's and don'ts in terms of the dating space? Obviously, kind of, I'm just trying to read the notes at the same time. Obviously, in terms of everyone's doing the best they can, but what are some of the interesting kind of do's and don'ts that you've seen from the dating space when it comes to male, female communication, whatever it might be, general dating?
Oh man, I'm not an
Big
expert.
question. Fuck, I've gone hard on two very big questions
Thanks for
early.
that. I don't know. I think being honest and being clear is really important. And I think that's something that's really overrated. And like, you know, people always talk about ghosting, like, and that's a thing. Like, I think if you're in the dating game with me,
Yes.
welcome. It's a party.
Yep. It's a party.
It's a party, especially in lockdown. Yeah, if I feel attacked, first reaction is to close up and get defensive. Yes. True.
Good, Jeb. Good, Jay.
Yeah. Dating game. I think honesty is kind of the best. Like, what are you looking for? And then you get, because it's like, I'm going to sound really heartless when I say this, but why invest your time in something? Have you read that thing that it's like, if you're not dating for marriage, so to speak, whatever that looks like to you, but if you're not dating for marriage, you're dating for heartbreak?
Fascinating. Haven't heard that. Who,
Pretty
do
cool.
you remember who said it?
Straight down the line. But it makes
Savage.
sense, right? Like, and I've done that. Like, I've been in things and I'm like, oh, this is okay for now. And it's
Yes.
like, what? Like, but if you're honest about that, which I regularly am, I'll be like, this is all I want right now. I don't see anything in the future, then that's fine. But if you're like not, I think it's just honesty.
Yeah.
That's my
It's
biggest thing.
big, actually. I really like where you've gone with that. So obviously, kind of recapping in terms of the research that we've done with a stack of really savvy females that we spoke to, one of the things that came up was obviously communication, obviously very big. A really interesting thing around what they find attractive is honesty, integrity, authenticity, those type of things, which absolutely I think the most amazing skills. It's really interesting when you look at the research that we've done around that, and then males actually finding it really challenging to be themselves, often from potentially lack of confidence or not feeling like they're perfect, that there's those masks, there's the ego, there's, trying to be someone that they're not. I reckon chicks can read straight fucking through it, and they must be able to go, like, he's not in alignment there, see straight through it.
Totally. I mean, I kind of feel like that. I feel like, and I mean, with honesty, I feel like if I found out that someone was lying to me, even if it was a casual thing or not even like just a thing, I'm like, okay, well, they're obviously happy to lie. And that's like, I'm like, okay, that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
But on the other sense, yeah, I think that's the hard thing with dating, right? It's like, how comfortable, because this is the thing, it comes back, I think, to that people creating ideas of the person they think they're with in their head and making them shape them.
Yes. This is big.
So like, say I come across someone who looks like they have a great job and a great this and that, I'm like, yeah, they got their shit together. They may be so far from having their shit together, but on an external view, they look like they have their shit together, but you just don't know. I think, and then you create this idea that they got their shit together. So then all of a sudden, when you realize that they're human and they don't have their shit together, you're like, what the hell? Like, what have I walked into? But because I made that preconceived idea of what I thought that they were, and then I matched, because confirmation bias, right? You go, oh yeah, I see that. That makes sense. you ignore every confirmation bias. For those who don't know, is like, if you want to think your partner is cheating on you, you're going to find signs, regardless of whether they're cheating on you or not, to have them cheating
Support
on you.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're supporting your own
Belief system.
Beliefs. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that's a huge one, is people's not, I think that's a really hard thing. And I think probably with men a lot too, and women with men, because I'm a true believer, I sound so preachy, but that women have played a part in this world that men are meant to exist in. We are the other half. We're still 50% of it. We've still encouraged men to not have feelings. We've still encouraged, we don't like it necessarily, but then all of a sudden the man cries in front of you and we don't know what to do because it's not normal to us.
This is
we don't
big.
see it.
I like where you're going with this.
We haven't seen it from our dads. Like, the first time my boyfriend cried in front of me, because my dad never cries. He is not a crier. I was like, what the fuck am I meant to do right here? Like, and it was like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to act. I definitely didn't hold space. I probably freaked out and ran the other direction. That poor guy is like, you know.
He's never recovered. He's never been the same since. Poor guy.
But that's like, I think women, I think it's underestimated. Yes, I think men encourage each other to not speak about deep things sometimes I mean, you would know more about that than I. But I think women definitely play a huge part of that, and we've allowed it to be a thing. And that's why when I talk about like raising Rocky, I'm like, I'm going to raise her to think that men can cry and lose their shit and have emotions, because she's going to be a teenager one day and she's going to be dating and she's going to be associated with other men, and she needs to be able to hold space for them and know that that's fine, and they need to be able to reciprocate. But it needs to be an equal playing field.
Beautiful. I love what you just said. So many paths I want to go down. For those that don't understand holding space, it's one of the best things you can do. But essentially, holding space is exactly as it sounds, holding space. So when there's a conversation had, it's the ability to listen without it's essentially the ability to listen with the intent to understand. So if you watch two people have a conversation, very few people have the ability to really be like really present and listen with the intent to understand. There's always the listening with the intent to respond, listening with the intent to give your opinion, listening with judgment. There's a whole stack of things. So holding space is really holding a safe container for the person to communicate properly, and just you being that anchor or that container for them. And it is an amazing skill. And from my own experience, it's actually super rare. So if you haven't fully heard that concept before or understood it, have a little Google and have a play around, which is really good. One of the things you mentioned, which I loved, is, and I completely agree, and this, I guess, kind of comes back to previous generations, is females have played a role in potentially, for some guys, not having them feel comfortable to really like lose their shit or cry or whatever it might be. And it's almost like rationally they're like, yeah, that's a really good idea. I'd love to see him kind of, cry or fall apart, whatever. And then when they see it, they're like, it's almost like, what the fuck do I do now? Or like, can he still hold the fort? And it really wigs people out, which is exactly what you said, like your first experience was. So how's it different now? Like if I come to you crying tomorrow because I've had a bad day, how will you respond differently?
It's no different to how a girlfriend would come and do the same thing, I think. Because for me now, I've worked so much on that and really had to pull myself through it to get to a place where it doesn't bother me now. Like, I'm like, you're a human, you have emotions at whatever level that is. Like, you have a right to feel them. Like, your feelings don't have to make sense. They can just be feelings. And I'm here to hold that space for you. So it doesn't matter whether they're a boy or the girl. I mean, probably I feel like with men, I would encourage it more, even because women have a tendency. I was on the phone to a friend the other day and she's having a bit of a hard time and she kept apologizing for being upset and crying. And I'm like, can you stop apologizing? Like, this is what I'm here for. Like, this is me holding space for you. Just let it go. Like, because I think that's a big thing with emotion, right? You got to feel it to let it go. And until you let it go, it's going to stick around. So if you're not letting yourself feel it, then it's not going to go.
Feeling is a really interesting thought for blokes. And it's something that is so deep ingrained that I find that bit really interesting, because I think I posted about this a few weeks ago. You almost like, so part of obviously what we're trying to do with momentum is almost retrain guys to feel. So it may sound ridiculous to some people, but a lot of females who have men in their lives will probably understand this. And it's almost, you know, I spoke to the boys about this. It's almost like they may go backwards before they go forwards, because you've gone from this suppressed, sedated, distracted human, where every time a feeling comes up that you might not kind of like, you go to grab onto something, distract myself, get on social media, do anything other than to feel that. So to get them to be with that feeling and just be okay with it is going to freak the fuck out of a lot of blokes before they can learn to navigate that going forward. So it can be that they almost feel like they go backwards because they're like, everything's heightened and they're feeling everything in order to go forward. But I like that. I like the ability to hold space. And I did an interview, it would have been last year, with a chick called Zoe Swain, who's a jet. And she framed it up really nicely, I reckon, because and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe again, every female might have a different experience of this, is you probably don't want him falling in a heap all the time for like 6 out of the 7 days a week. And what she did was she reminded, or she framed it around him, reminding him of his role. So the way that she kind of framed it, which I thought was really cool, was like, all right, like go and have a meltdown for 48 hours. And after that, I need you back in charge and back in, you know, back as the man of the house. It's almost like you've given permission, you've set boundaries, and you've reminded him of his masculine kind of empowering position within the house. And for me, that was a really like cool way to position it. How does that sit with you? You don't have to agree with it, obviously.
No, I don't not agree with it, but I feel like it could be a little bit restricting as well, maybe.
Yep.
But I think, yeah, I mean, I do agree with that in a sense, because I've been in a relationship where there were meltdowns a lot, and I was tired of holding space.
Yeah.
It really, like, holding space for someone is a wonderful thing and it's beautiful, but sometimes it finishes and you do feel like you need a recharge. And it's because you have to be so present and you're there for someone and you're constantly kind of making sure they're okay. If that's all the time, it can be really draining. And I think traditionally males hold the more masculine, keep it together, which, you know, you're the strong one, put some ice on it, you'll be right, kind of mentality. And so for women, it's almost like, I feel like it would reach a point, well, I know for me in that relationship, it reached a point that was past it where it kind of was like this, and this is going to sound quite brutal, but like, this is not attractive anymore. Like, I don't see that masculine energy, or I feel like I'm the one holding us up.
Yep, totally get it. Totally get it.
So I think, yes, I do agree with your friend. I do think that sometimes it would be a little bit restricting. Like maybe someone needs to go into a dark hole for a week and that's just what they need to do. But that would be really hard to be on the receiving end on. So
that would be a challenging conversation to have around. Yeah, challenging conversation around, because what you're saying is exactly kind of what they were saying around absolutely good to feel all the feels and encourage that. And at some point that energetic dynamic or that energy dynamic changes, where you've tried to surrender potentially into your feminine and him in his masculine, if that's the traditional kind of energy you go in, and all of a sudden you're holding the masculine for a lot while he's in the feminine, which over time, if that's not your natural kind of way of being, probably starts to wear thin. What's that?
Bring up a lot of stuff for yourself as well as them. So then you're going to have two people who are like fighting their own demons while trying to make a relationship work. And that's going to be hard.
Yep. While we're on energy, should we go into a little bit of polarity stuff? Might as well.
You're better at this subject than me. I just chime in where, yeah, but go.
All right. So for those that don't understand masculine and feminine, traditionally people think of masculine, male, feminine, female, but we actually have both inside of us. We generally have one that's stronger, but also that we need to cultivate as well if it isn't quite as strong. So I'm going to say David Data talks about it. Males as a whole, probably 95% of them are stronger in their masculine, and about 5% of males are stronger in their feminine. I can kind of think of a couple of good mates that are probably more feminine. Their partners are probably more masculine, but as a whole, males masculine, females feminine. From a polarity point of view, if you understand the term polarity, it means polar, opposites. So if you're, there's a couple of, like, one of the things that I find interesting is how do you keep the spark alive? How do you keep intimacy, desire, all those things alive over a long period of time? And there's a number of elements. Esther Perel's really good with desire and her book, Mating in Captivity. Another person is Michaela Bowen. So Boehm, Michaela Bowen. And she talks about polarity and the importance of that for spark. So if you as a male are starting to head towards a neutral spot, or you as a female are starting to head towards a neutral spot, then that polarity can get lost. So what you're trying to actually do is strengthen your energetic muscle, so to speak. So males looking at what they can do to strengthen their masculine, if they are in that 95% that are masculine. Females trying to do what they can to strengthen that feminine. What gets really challenging is, again, almost, and this will sound interesting, but if you're not cultivating that and you are just spending all the time with your partner, then eventually you guys just rub off on each other. He becomes a little bit less masculine, she becomes a little bit more masculine, and that rubs off. So finding things that kind of cultivate that, if chemistry is important to you in a healthy relationship, which I would like to think that it is. So worth sussing out polarity. Talking of polarity and energies, Jake Woodward, what have you learned recently around energies and the work? What, go down that path, it's good.
What did I send you this morning? That's what I sent, right? The Jake dude.
Yep, you did. I wish I had it available, but I think if I click out of this, I won't.
What?
Can you remember parts of it?
No.
Okay.
It was something to do with sex and women and holding space for them to something.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
You obviously don't
but
read it.
If you want to go down, I read it well. If you want to go down that path, what is interesting, I'd love your thoughts on your experience and maybe even girlfriend's experience, is, and I think we might have spoken about this when we spoke last time, I can't remember, is males being able to hold the space or to anchor in females' big emotions. What's your experience of it personally, if you want to go down that, or what's your experience maybe in talks with other females? Because I get the feeling.
I feel like I'm a bit hard because I like laugh at my own emotions. Not great
you do.
in that time.
Yep.
But from other friends, I think, well, I mean, I mentioned it before in our conversations on here, like there's that crazy girl stereotype.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like that when emotions get too much for a man, which is not their fault because they're conditioned, I think, sometimes, but once you recognize that you're conditioned, you should probably start trying to
move out of that conditioning. Unconditioned
yourself. But I think it's about, I think awareness is a huge thing in relationships, in dating, in everything. If you're aware of your own mind in a conversation, you're going to be a lot better off because you're checking yourself. You're like, okay, why is this making me feel like this? Why is them crying freaking me out right now? Oh, because I never saw females cry. My mum didn't cry. So then and that internal chat. But I think it's hard because I think for women, we just want our emotions to be validated.
Yeah.
We don't need you to fix them.
Great point.
90% of the time, doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs to be like, yeah, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
That's it.
So
But I
on
think
that,
sometimes it comes across as an attack, or men don't feel like they can deal with the amount of emotions coming at them. And our emotions are more outward. So we'll be like crying and like, you know, upset. And that can be scary to someone who's, yep, I agree. Okay, good.
good.
But yeah, I think a lot of the time when you're in it, emotions look really scary. But when you actually step back and take a breath, it's not that, I don't know, not that, I don't want to say not that scary, but it's not, like, for someone who's not used to it, it can cause a freak out, I guess.
Totally. Completely resonate with it. So so for a guy, if he was in the fire, so to
What does
speak,
that mean?
well, if he's in the middle of big emotions,
Okay, yeah. His own emotions or her emotions?
no, their emotions, how does he, what would help you feel like it's been validated? If there were words, if there was actions, what would it look like to you to feel that what you're going through was validated?
I understand. I can
Yep.
see why that would be hard for you. I think it's just words and then actions that follow. So it's not losing your shit over the fact that they never pick their clothes up off the ground and then saying, yeah, I can see that would be really annoying, and then continuing to do the same action and leaving your shit everywhere. That's a very stereotypical example. But
It really annoys you, doesn't it?
it's a thing. But it's just valid. Like, that's all we want. Like, and that's what I mean. Like, coming back to connection, like, if we reach out for connection and it gets rejected, then that just sends us into a spiral. Like, I mean, all humans, not just women, into a spiral of like questioning yourselves. Is what I'm saying wrong? Should I not be saying this? Should I feel bad about this? Am I weird? Is this not a normal thing? Whether if it comes with even like if you said something to a man and they're like, I can't really understand where you're coming from, but I hear you. That's it.
I was going to mention that because sometimes you won't be able to understand.
Yeah, like, you're not always going to be able to understand your partner's stuff. Like, you're not the same person. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know their triggers. You don't know where they're coming from. But if you can just say, I hear you, I see you, I know, I've listened, I'm holding space for you, I'm in the present moment. Like, that kind of stuff, as compared to, oh my God, you're being ridiculous. Are you really upset again? As soon as you say that, like, essentially your relationship's screwed. Like,
yeah,
it's going to snowball, because as soon as you shame your partner for coming forth with emotions, and like, people don't normally come forth with emotions. I know for me, I don't lightly. Like, if I'm going to step out on a little branch and be vulnerable and say, this is something that's really been bothering me, it's not something I've just come up with in the moment. It's something I've been humming and hawing about for a few days, and I'm a little bit nervous about bringing it up, but I know I need to bring it up because I can't seem to get my head past it.
Yeah, that's big. It's really good. Coming back to the point I made before, I think that it's so common for that to be shut down that it's really important. And you shut me down on it before. You was like, I don't think it's that easy. I was like, well, fuck that. But I think it's really important that you need to set the framework early if you do get shut down, to address it then and there, because it's the continuous shutdowns that make you a fucking miniature human halfway through your relationship.
If you can stay present enough in the moment and not be triggered by a situation like that, then yes, your conversation is exactly how it should go.
Or you come back to it later and address it.
Yeah. But no, I'm
Perfect.
not disagreeing with you. I agree with what you said. I just think that in an emotional state, which often if you're bringing something up and then you get slammed down for it, you're both going to end up in emotional states. That's a hard thing to circle back to straight away.
Yeah, that's good. Great point. Loved it. One of the big mistakes, is that the right term, that blokes make is stonewalling. Do you know what stonewalling is?
Can you define it for me? I do, but like, define it for me.
It's essentially going MIA and going cold on them and leaving them like cooked. And it's a super common theme. I've had a number of conversations about this. For those that are interested in going further into this stuff, the Gottman Institute There's a conversation down there by Jay that I'll get you to read, Elle, while I'm talking through this. So the Gottman Institute, John Gottman is the lead, I'm going to say, lecturer there. He's been the man for 40 odd years. And he talks about the 4 major horsemen. Can't remember the exact terminology he uses, but criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, contentment, something like that is the 4th one. And then he talks about a 5-to-1 ratio of 5 positive reinforcement to 1 constructive criticism. But stonewalling is one of those things that comes up a lot, where a female might kind of express herself in whatever that means, and then the guy kind of pulls back or goes hiding, which I'll get Elle to talk about, but I'm guessing it's one of the worst fucking things you could possibly do.
So I used to be a stonewaller.
You were a stonewaller. You were a stonewaller.
Like very young, but I was not brought up in a very emotionally intelligent home.
Yep.
So if someone came forth with emotions, I would freak out and run away, essentially.
Yep.
And I think almost being on that end has made it easier for me to deal with it when it's happened to me, because I realize that it's not actually something about the person, it's about the person running away.
Yep.
But yeah, it's really hard to be on the end of. And like I've been on the end of it as well. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
More recently, because I have worked on that a lot. But yeah, it's a lot.
I'm going to give my, also the boys tell me I talk too much and that I need to be off by 50 past, which is what your time, 8:20? Yeah, 7:50 my time, 8:20 your time. I know, I get cut off all the time. They hate me talking too much. So I'm going to give a little scenario, because I used to do this as well, and I didn't realize why I did it until I was speaking to my therapist. And what's a really common theme, and it'd be interesting actually, your opinion on this as a conscious parent, is if I did wrong when I was a kid, is that love was withdrawn. And I reckon it's a super common theme. So what I realized in a stack of my relationships was my way of like punishing them for whatever was to do the same. Withdraw love and pull back, which is fucking horrible, but obviously I had no idea what the fuck I was doing at the time. And it sounds like a super common theme that was like literally installed in my DNA. And obviously when you know better, you can do better, but I had no idea about this. Ex-girlfriend told me about it, but I didn't really have the intellect to understand it. And then my, previous girlfriend started bringing it to my attention, and I was like, fuck. So I started looking into it, and it kind of makes sense as to where it came from. But is that something that like you're aware of in terms of the stonewalling or retracting love when they've been naughty?
With parenting, yeah, for sure. I'm so careful to never withhold affection, never withhold I love you. It's not, I'm really conscious of it, but I think that's because I don't want her to think that making mistakes should be associated with being punished. And I don't think love, affection, or any of the human basic needs, so connection, love, that should be associated with punishment. I don't agree with punishment almost.
It's fucking horrible.
It's awful. It's like molding a child through through fear based. All you're gonna do is make a child scared of you.
Yeah.
Like,
shocking
it's
approach.
not gonna do anything. Like, I mean, it's been a big thing in parenting because I've had to really learn to let go of control, because I kind of thought that parenting was just controlling your child. Like, the child in the supermarket before I had a child having a tantrum, I was like, oh my God, that parent has no control over their kid. No, that's not the thing. Like, kids are going to throw tantrums. They're going to have meltdowns. There's an overload of emotions. If you don't hold space for them, they then learn coping mechanisms. If they can't turn to you when they're upset, they're going to turn into themselves and they're going to hide, which is stonewalling, essentially.
Yep.
They're hiding.
Spot on.
They're hiding from the emotions. They're hiding from what is in the room.
Yep. I love that. That must be super challenging when your kid is being an absolute monster in the supermarket, squealing like nothing else. You've got people around you, and you're like,
I know.
oh,
I'm that parent that like sits on the ground and just patiently counts my breaths and waits.
that is savage and so impressive.
It's a lot, but
It's a
it's taught me
lot.
so much. I think nothing can quite prepare you for the self-development that comes with being a parent. It's crazy.
Yeah. A really good question from Jay here.
Yes, I saw
And
that.
it's for those that can't see it. As a woman, when you start a conversation, would you say you're always looking for a response solution or sometimes just to be heard and acknowledged? I'm fascinated in this, and this
I
is
think this is something that needs to be made clear at the beginning from women. I feel like it's an error on our part because sometimes I just want to vent and I don't need someone to say anything. Like it's just sit there and listen to me talk so I can sort my own thoughts out in my head verbally to you. And then there's other times when it's like, no, I need a response. Like I think, yeah, it's a hard one because I feel like it's unique to each situation. But I would say a lot of the time, if you make someone and their emotions feel validated and heard, you're already like halfway, 3/4 of the way there.
this is big. So, John Marsden, women are from Mars, men are from Venus. Is that right? Or the other way around? Whatever it is.
I don't know.
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. That's what I was trying to say. So he talks about this. It's a really interesting book. I think it's, 20 years old. So I don't know if the rules have changed. But he talks about, he's literally, I think he divides the book into 2 sections, male, female. And what he says males' biggest problem is, or one of their biggest problems is always having to be Mr. Fix-It. So one of my, or an interesting look at this from my side of things is in a relationship a couple ago, I was trying to be Mr. Fix-It and she was like, just shut the fuck up and listen to me.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. So I learned it.
And then a huge thing. It's like, I don't want you to fix this. I just want you to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
a
then
big
I went,
thing. Then immediately go to fix it. Well, maybe we
Yeah.
can do this. It's like, it's actually not about that right now. I just need to get this off my chest and I need you to hear me. And then that's it. Like, but that's women. We talk through stuff.
Yeah.
Like I would literally call a girlfriend and say, I just need to vent to you for a sec. Is that cool? You just vent. You just put everything out there. And you're like, okay, cool. That sucks. I'm like, yeah, that's it.
You do that to me sometimes as well.
That's true.
I do think it's an interesting piece around communication as well, because the last girlfriend was probably a more like wanting me to fix it, whereas I'm like just sitting back quietly listening. She's like, so what do you think? I was like, well, I've actually been taught recently just to sit back and listen. So it probably is in part a communication bit of like, maybe, I don't know, I'd be interested with all the females that are on here, maybe assume that the best thing you can do is listen. And if you're asked for your opinion or your advice or a solution, then you can kind of jump in. But maybe best to, by default, assume that they just want to be heard, seen and understood.
Or just ask the question like, so did you want me to fix it or am I just listening?
Yep.
That's it. We'll be like,
this is good.
Yeah, Hannah. We'll be like, no, fix it. Like, this is really bad. Or we'll be like, oh no, I feel better now. It's fine. Go back to what you were doing.
Yeah, this is good. Good as a party, get involved there. Yeah, it's big because you're right. For blokes, I don't know what it is in our DNA. I'm pretty sure John Marsden talks about it in his book, but we are programmed to find solutions. So to kind of sit there sometimes and just listen is a new skill that we need to acquire, and then to potentially hear the same thing be played over again, you know, in terms of having the same conversation 3 or 4 times. That is a challenge for blokes of like, okay, I'm pretty sure I've heard this story before, but I'm just going to sit and listen and hope maybe that she'll ask for my opinion or advice, but otherwise I'm just going to sit here and listen.
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
I mean, yeah. You'll know if you're meant to be fixing it, you'll know.
Yeah.
I think it's best to go with just validate, tell them they've been heard, and actually hear them though. So I'm not saying this so you guys can go and be like, I've heard you. can we end this conversation now? Like, actually listen, hold space, and then just, yeah, I mean, any human wants to be heard.
It's true. Heard, seen, there's some good comments coming through. So the boys will start to kind of wrap me up pretty soon, which is frustrating, but we can get you on again. What question for you? And I'm putting you on the spot, so see how you go. What's your favourite, or what's the best trait in a man? And even females who are on, what's your favourite trait in a man?
Like 18-year-old me would have been like,
tall, dark, and handsome. Don't say that, please.
Totally. Now I'm like emotional intelligence. I'm like, and personal growth. Like, you want to be with someone who has awareness of themselves, who is willing to grow with you. Like, screw being stuck in something where I want to grow and they're stagnant. And yeah, emotional intelligence. I don't want to have to huff around and sigh. Like, I want the communication to flow. Like, it needs to be like, "Oi, you seem a little pissed off." It's like, yeah, I am. Let's talk about it. And then it's like done. I think communication, actually, emotional intelligence, communication. If you can't communicate, then that is everything. Communication is literally everything. If you can't communicate with your partner about what you want in a relationship, what you want sexually, if you want anything with kids, like, wait till you have kids. It's like throwing a grenade into your relationship. Like, if you can't communicate around that and work as a team, you're screwed.
Just so you know, you're completely on par with all the feedback that we got. Communication, vulnerability, empathy. Janelle can even probably chip in here. We had 6 or 7 reoccurring themes, and communication was, you literally just nailed all of them.
Yeah, forgive me.
One piece of advice, it might even tie into what you just said, open-hearted, that was another one. One piece of advice that you would give guys from either a dating side of things or a relationship, or you can go both, other than communication maybe, if you've got something else in your tool of tricks.
Sort your shit out. And I mean, like, I don't mean like, and I would say this to women as well, like, get aware of your shit, get aware of your conditioning, get aware of your parenting and how that's affected you, and start like sifting through it and get a psychologist. Psychologist's the best, like a good one. But I think if you're with someone who's not aware of their ego, they don't know what the ego is, they don't know how they're protecting themselves because of their childhood trauma, they don't know how their experiences have shaped them, like, how are you meant to help them, or how are you meant to communicate with them if they don't even know themselves?
It's a very good point. It's a great point. And little Monk makes a really good point here. Keys to the Kingdom, which I'm pretty sure is Alison Armstrong. So keys to the king, if from the other side of the fence, if females are looking to understand males a bit better, which I know we're going the other way, but if females wanting to understand males a little bit better, Keys to the Kingdom and the Queen's Code are 2. I've told you to read Queen's Code, haven't I?
Have
you read it?
I've nearly finished my study this semester, so I'm nearly ready.
Queen's Code, like, anyone who's read it, and there's a few people on here that have read it, literally blows them apart in terms of communication or understanding men. So food for thought as well. Lemons. It's 7:50 my time, 8:20 your time. I'm going to get cut off here, but thank you for your beautiful insights, and we will hopefully get you on again soon.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.